the subject of my little piece is I need an oasis. And as I have contemplated that, the truth of that has so been underscored as I look back over the decades. I remember I was told by a really top dog trial attorney as I was embarking on a law school, and he said this, he said, 90% of winning is preparation. And I took that to heart. Not in law school, I didn't, but I did when I became a trial lawyer. And I became a workaholic. I poured myself into it, and I found out he was right. That not everybody was willing to put the time and just the days, the nights, the weekends, and so I started getting the payback for that. Now, me and Jesus, by the way, were not on the same team during this season, and so the messages I had coming to me were pretty much from a single direction. And so I pursued that, and so later when I married Lori, Lori tells me, and we've been married for 34 years now. She says, she tells me that I tend to be a little over-focused, a little intense. I get into this mode that I am thinking about what I have going. I have made a long time habit, and I pour myself into my work. Anybody like that in the room at all? Any of y'all? Am I the only one talking here that understands what I'm talking about there? I think yes. Thank you very much for that affirmation, Brown. No, I know you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here. But I do. I get into this mode that is so intense. A couple of years ago, and some of you in the SALT classes have heard me talk about this because I tend to share my foibles. And there are so many, they make so many good stories. And I learned something, though, even a couple of years ago, and that was that the intensity of my focus on my work affected my relationship with her. And she came into the kitchen one night and she told me just point blank, she says, I don't feel cherished by you. And that began this process. At first I'm going, I thought I was like the role model for outstanding husbands there. Just asked me. I thought I was doing a great job. And she's saying I'm not. And I realized as I began to pursue that and to realize that all of my intensity and my focus on my stuff and my getting so wound up that I wasn't even seeing anybody in the house with me, that's not a good thing. And as I pursued that, I realized that had a very similar path to how I was even treating God. And even in the pursuit of understanding how to love my wife, I realized that loving my wife was much like loving God. It's all about practicing the presence of both. And so I'm a guy that I'm greatly challenged by distraction. I feel plagued like this. You'd think after several decades, all the plans and all the ways. I'm a disorganized guy too. When my mind, I've got so many things. It's like when I list them out, I'm starting to get bummed out just thinking about it. But I know some of you are challenged with the same stuff. When my wife and I first got, here I am, a workaholic preparation nut, highly successful as a trial lawyer, and yet I'm one of the most disorganized guys on the planet. I mean, my wife bought me a book early in our marriage called The Messies Manual. And then later she signed me up for this new thing called the Stephen Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You know, it's like, what are you saying? What are you saying to me? And so all of these challenges that have plagued me all of this time, getting wound up, the distractions. And then I tell you what, I am an encourager. I'm an exhorter encourager by gifting. That is I love that. I get great joy of that. And yet at the same time, I'm just constantly being challenged with discouragement. It's like something is always, or someone, an enemy that is just constantly provoking me. And I've talked to other people like that are encouragers. So we have all of these things that are just constantly dragging us down, all of these things that are in opposition. I remember, I don't recall exactly. I was trying to remember when I started taking spiritual retreats. I remember when I started taking God with me on my fishing trips in the 90s. I was an avid fly fisherman, and I started making the habit. It was, walking with God is so often just such an incremental thing, bit by bit, piece by piece, showing me this and that. And I would go every year off up into the mountains by myself to go fly fishing. And I started just bringing my Bible along. And so I'd say for days out, not anybody around. And I would have these wonderful times, but I didn't really contemplate that as anything other than an annual something. Desperate men do desperate deeds. And so over time, I started realizing that even though I was a guy that enjoyed, I was religious, if you will, about every morning I'd be with God. But even that, it just wasn't enough. Somewhere in the last, I think, a dozen years, I started, and I think it was at the influence of a mentor, a guy that's old enough to be my father, which is pretty old. And he started encouraging me, just started really pressing me to get away more, to be away with God, to pursue Him, to pursue His presence, to spend time. It is not unlike our relationship with our spouse or a loved one. You can't fast forward relationship. God moves at that speed of relationship, and so it is in this Oasis. When that fantastic, I love the Passion Translation. Are you weary? Are you carrying a heavy burden? Come to me. I will refresh your life, for I am your oasis. I would do things that would be really fun. I'm not, if I haven't already told you enough of a list, I'm also a guy who has a hard time having fun. I know that is a shock to you. You think, how could that be? You are so, obviously you must be so fun. But I'm challenged by that. I have to, and I will do things. I purposefully set up things to have fun. But you know something I've also noticed about that is that watching that football game or going to the movie or hanging out with the guys or something like that in some way, it only lasts the length of the time that you're distracted. It has no legs to it. It does not, it might turn my soul, my mind, will, and emotions, but it does not refresh my spirit. And the only thing that has done that is the deepening, the ever-deepening pursuit of time with Him. And I have found, as I have started going away with him, that he is such a rewarder. I've had 2 visions in my life. They were both in 2005 when I was still the district attorney, and one of them is pertinent to this moment. I'm in my den, and I'm having a conversation with the Lord, and I journal this stuff. I come back and correct the typos later, but I'm trying to discern. I'm asking him questions, and one time he just utterly changes the subject. And I have my eyes closed, and I see this white butterfly. Some of you have heard me share this before. Most of you, I know, have not. I see this white butterfly, and the Lord says, "Do you see the white butterfly?" And I go, now he's changed the subject. I have something far more important to talk to him about, and he's shifted on me. And I say, "Yeah, well, yes." And then he says this, "Do you see how," and it's flying, "do you see how it just floats on the wind of my breath beneath the warmth of my sun?" And I go, "Yeah." And he said, "I want you to be the butterfly and stop being the bee. Stop your striving. Float. Rest in me. I will get you to the flower that I have for you." Now, that is a word that I have been trying to cultivate into my life ever since then. And let me just tell you something. As I have pursued time with him, as I have purposefully sought to go away with him, because he's always beckoning us, he's always saying, come away with me. Come away. And the world tells me I don't have time to do this. I've got to do this. Have you not seen my list? Don't you know all the stuff? And then I realized my Heavenly Daddy can bend time. My Heavenly Daddy can do in an instant what it might take me a week. And he's saying, prioritize me. And so I started doing this. I started 15, 16 years ago, whenever it is, I would go away on a retreat, not bringing him as my pet on my fishing trip, but coming away with one reason: I'm coming away to be with you. And this is the stuff he'd do. Remember, we serve a supernatural God. He's not natural. He's not a secular, he's not your pal, although he is your friend. And this is what he does. He would start highlighting. I would look at my bookshelf before I would go, and he would highlight a book I hadn't noticed had been in there for years, and I would take it with me. And every time it would be, or he might tell me, like he did last summer, that he wanted me to re-listen to an audiobook, and it was just spot on. He starts orchestrating things. I'll never forget the time that I'm on the last day of my retreat. I'm at a buddy named Mark Nuttall's place, and it's a Sunday, and I'm going to be leaving that day. And it's been a lovely time. And I'm listening as I'm cooking breakfast in the kitchen. I'm listening to Meet the Press, a very deeply spiritual experience. And suddenly the TV goes silent. And I come around and I see there's just ants on the screen. There's nothing on, it's just the ants. And I go to the TV, the remote control, and I start flipping around. I can only get, this is cable, I can only get one station. I can only get one program. And it's some guy who I don't know, and he's just beginning to preach a sermon. And it is exactly what I was needing to hear. It is the message that was for me in that moment. And as I get up from the TV, I think about everything. I thought, I wonder. I pick up the remote control. The TV totally works again. He did that for me. He loves me. He loves us. He's saying, come away. Come away. The first thing I ever heard, and it was before the butterfly deal, the first phrase that I heard from the Lord, that when I was trying to hear his voice, I was going to seminars, I was trying to get out of my head, get down here, and it was this phrase, and it made no sense because I'd never heard him say this sort of thing before, and it was this: rest in me. Rest in me. You and I, each and every one, are looking for that oasis. You must pursue it, and he wants to meet you in it. He is such, if I have any one testimony, it would be this: he is an incredible rewarder of those who diligently seek him. He meets me when I come away with him. He refreshes my life. It transcends everything that I do. The payoff has been immense. Come away with me. Come away. So where are you in this? Where are you? I know what your heart is saying. All the challenges. And what I would say to you is, he will meet you. And he will love you. He will tell you secrets. He will so make it worth your while. I think it's time to contemplate with him a little bit. I haven't said anything about what I've dealt with or how I deal or what I completely deal with. I'm always having to tune things up. Even just this week, I'd had this regimen for decades, and this week I changed it up, and I started going out in the early morning before breakfast, and I go out we're by this pond, and there's this waterfall, and I have taken to just sitting. I don't bring my list, and I just sit in his presence. And I tell him how much I love him. And I just receive the warmth of his presence. And before I know it, 30 minutes have flown by. And I'm refreshed. He has a vested interest in you and me. And all he says is just, come away with me. And let's get to work on that. So spend 20 minutes, right? Till 10, 20 minutes. I'd like you to just contemplate. Stay in the room. don't go down the block. Don't have to make us send a flare up to recapture you. But just get alone with him and just answer a couple of questions. Where am I on this? Are you calling me to something deeper, Lord? And then what do you need to do that? What do you need to do that? Our God will provide whatever you need to be a way, including advice against obstacles you put up that really aren't good excuses.